In 1996, Kodak had $16 billion in revenue, more than 100,000 employees at its peak, 90% of the US film market, the most recognized photography brand in the world. Then, on January 19, 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. Here is the part that should stop you cold. Kodak didn't miss the digital revolution. They started it. In 1975, one of their own engineers built the world's first digital camera in a Kodak lab, with Kodak parts on Kodak time. They saw it work, they understood what it was, and then they chose not to build it. This is the story of how a company with everything chose to protect what it had, and lost everything anyway. George Eastman starts a photography business in Rochester, New York in 1880. At the time, taking a photograph required a chemist, a dark room, and a cart full of equipment. Eastman wanted to change that. His idea was simple. What if anyone could take a picture? In 1888, Kodak launches the first handheld camera. The slogan says it all. You press the button, we do the rest. It works. People love it. Over the following decades, Kodak grows into one of the largest companies in America. Rochester, New York becomes a company town, built around Kodak wages, Kodak pensions, Kodak schools. And at the center of all of it, film. Photographic film is one of the most profitable products in American manufacturing. Gross margins around 80%. You make the film once, you sell it over and over. Every birthday party, every wedding, every family vacation, Kodak gets a slice. By the mid-1970s, Kodak controls roughly 90% of the US film market and 85% of US camera sales. They are not just the biggest photography company in the world, they are photography. By the mid-1970s, Kodak is making money on almost everything it touches, and that is exactly the problem. When your best product earns 80 cents of profit for every dollar of revenue, everything else looks bad. Digital camera margins are around 5%. Printers, same story. Software, uncertain, the numbers always told the same story: protect the film. In the 1980s, Fujifilm enters the US market. They price their film lower. They sponsor the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics when Kodak decides not to. Suddenly, Fujifilm is on television, on the sidelines, in the hands of professional photographers. Kodak fights back. Price wars, marketing campaigns. But the battle has a cost. In 1996, Kodak reaches its highest ever revenue, $16 billion. Revenue falls to $14.4 billion in 1997, and profits nearly disappeared in that single year. The Fujifilm pressure is part of it, but something bigger is happening. People are starting to hear about digital cameras. The film market is not going to grow forever, and inside Kodak, the engineers already know why. To understand why Kodak went bankrupt in 2012, you have to go back to December 1975. A 24-year-old engineer named Steven Sasson is working in a Kodak research lab in Rochester. His supervisor asks him to look into a new type of image sensor called a CCD, a charge couple device. See what you can do with it, he says. Sasson builds something. It takes him about a year. The result is a camera that weighs 4 kilograms, about the size of a toaster. It uses a borrowed Super 8 movie camera lens, 16 nickel-cadmium batteries, a small circuit board he wires by hand. He points it at a lab technician, presses the button, and waits 23 seconds while the image writes to a cassette tape. It works. Sasson brings the prototype to management. He shows them the image. It is 100 by 100 pixels, black and white, grainy. The executives look at it and say something close to this. That is interesting. But we cannot see a business in this. And please, do not tell anyone. Kodak files the patent in 1978, then puts the project on a shelf. The reasoning is not crazy. Digital cameras have 5% margins. Film has 80%. If digital takes off, it will eat Kodak's most profitable product. Better to delay. Better to let someone else go first. Better to protect what you have. Every choice is rational. Every choice is wrong. In 1993, Kodak hires George Fisher from Motorola. He is supposed to transform the company. Fisher pushes digital. Kodak starts making digital cameras, digital photo kiosks, digital printing. They launch an early photo sharing platform called Kodak Gallery. They put their name on digital products and try to compete. Here is the cruel irony: it partly works. By 2005, Kodak is the #1 selling digital camera brand in the United States. They have made the transition, at least on paper. But the math is broken. Every digital camera Kodak sells replaces a film camera. Every digital photo taken is a film roll not purchased. Every year, the high-margin business shrinks. Digital cameras run at roughly 5% margins. The company that was built on 80% margins is now fighting for 5%. Then, in 2007, Apple releases the iPhone. Nobody buys a camera anymore. They already have one in their pocket. It does not say Kodak on it. The digital transition Kodak had spent a decade trying to win becomes irrelevant almost overnight. The market is not digital cameras. The market is smartphones. And Kodak is not in smartphones. Go back to December 1975 one more time. Steven Sasson is 24 years old. He is sitting in a Kodak research lab in Rochester with a machine he built mostly from spare parts. His supervisor had given him an assignment: look into CCD sensors and see what happens. What happens is history. The camera captures a single image of a lab technician named Joy Marshall, 100 by 100 pixels. Just over 0.01 megapixels. It is barely recognizable as a face. Sasson has to use a specially built display unit just to see it. He walks the machine into a conference room. He shows management. He explains what it is: a camera with no film that stores images electronically that could one day be connected to a television or a printer to display photos. The room goes quiet. Then the executives say, "That is very interesting. But it is not something we can sell, and please, Steven, do not tell anyone about this." He does not. For years, the project stays inside Kodak. A patent is filed. A report is written. The files are shelved. Kodak patents digital photography in 1978. The patent expires in 2007. At that point, when anyone can freely build on Sasson's invention, Kodak has been in decline for a decade. The company held the original design for 29 years. They could see the future clearly enough to protect it legally. They could not bring themselves to build it commercially. Sasson goes on to receive the National Medal of Technology and Innovation from President Obama in 2009 for inventing digital photography, while working at a company that never shipped it. January 19, 2012, Kodak files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the Southern District of New York. The numbers are stark. Total assets, $5.05 billion. Total liabilities, $7.76 billion. The company owes more than it owns to more than 100,000 creditors. Here is the part that is hard to read without stopping for a moment. Kodak owned more than 1,100 digital imaging patents. Year after year, they made hundreds of millions of dollars licensing them to consumer electronics companies. These patents were the most valuable things the company had left. During bankruptcy, they sell the entire patent portfolio. They had originally hoped to get $2.6 billion. They received $525 million. Apple, Google, and Facebook are among the buyers. They pay Kodak fractions on the dollar for the inventions Kodak had been sitting on for decades. Rochester, New York, tells its own story. Kodak's local payroll had peaked at 60,400 jobs in 1982. By 2004, that number was 16,300. A city built around one company watched that company slowly leave. Today, Kodak still exists. In 2024, it has around 3,900 employees. Revenue is approximately $1 billion. This is the company that had $16 billion in revenue and 145,000 employees. The fall took about 25 years, and it was quiet almost the entire way. Here is the uncomfortable thing about the Kodak story. They had the technology. They filed the patent. They knew digital photography was coming. They invented it. This was not a case where a company was blindsided. Kodak had 37 years between the invention and the bankruptcy. 37 years to adapt, to pivot, to rebuild. So, what went wrong? Every decision that led to bankruptcy was rational at the time. Protecting 80% margins is sensible. Avoiding a product that cannibalizes your best business is sensible. Letting competitors test the market first is sensible. The problem is that sensible choices for the short term can add up to catastrophe over decades. Kodak's failure was not stupidity. It was not laziness. It was the specific, predictable way that profitable companies protect what they have instead of building what comes next. The innovator's dilemma, Clayton Christensen called it, a pattern that plays out over and over in every industry. And here is what follows you out of this story. Somewhere, right now, a company with enormous profits and a dominant market position is sitting on a technology that threatens everything it has built. The engineers know it works. The executives know it exists. The choice is the same one Kodak faced. The yellow box is still for sale. The company that made it is a fraction of what it was. And the photograph that started all of this, a grainy 100 by 100 pixel image of a lab technician taken in a Rochester basement in December 1975, that photograph is still out there, somewhere. The first proof that it was always possible.